So we've got two sets of notes here. I put them both on Canvas. This is a little easier to read and so forth. But so we wrapped up with the other day the great compromise between the Virginia plan and New Jersey plan. And this is what they came up with yesterday. I kind of talked about the 17th Amendment, 16th Amendment. And so both houses have to pass a bill for it to come along. And of course, it has to be signed by the president as well. Yes? Okay. That being said, we're not done with this new Constitution. So during the convention, when they set up the Great Compromise, the House of Representatives, this creates a distinct issue. When you're doing the census, the population count, the question becomes this. There's a peculiar institution that some states still have, called slavery. So do you count those slaves as population? And so in discussing this, guys, at the convention, if the South is allowed to count the slaves as population, that will give them more what? More seats in the House of Representatives. Okay? Now, there were many in the North that had already done away with slavery. And they were hoping to convince the South, that they should get rid of this institution. So we're at a crossroads here. If they don't allow the South to count the slaves as population, will they vote to ratify this Constitution? And the answer to that question is no. Okay? So remember back when they did the Declaration of Independence, Hancock said you got to have all 13. Okay? And so they took the slavery clause out of the Declaration of Independence. Okay? Here again, we're confronted with an issue. Okay? That if they don't compromise here, there is no new Constitution. We're stuck with the Articles of Confederation. So they compromise. Okay? So when you look back at the leaders here, again, General Washington, George Washington is in charge of the convention. Ben Franklin is there. Madison, Hamilton, of course. Okay? You can look back and be critical of these founders that to compromise on this issue. Okay? But understand this, there is no new Constitution without this compromise. So you guys know this history. Everybody knows this history, right? They settle on counting each slave as 3/5 of a human being for the purposes of population and taxation. Okay, so the southern states that have slavery are going to have to pay more in taxes. Remember yesterday I talked about how, where did the federal government get its money? They tax the states based on their population. Okay, so the states are going to have to pay more in taxes. So this just kind of explains kind of the predicament they're in here. Okay, so southern states wanted them to count. Northerners were opposed to slavery, many of them, and said they had no legal rights, so you can't count them. You count them as property, not population. So the Northerners compromised because you would not get 9 of the 13 states, because you need 9 of the 13 to ratify. Okay, and there were more than 4 slave-holding states at this time. So that becomes the Three-Fifths Compromise. Okay. Now next week, we're going to be talking about the Federalist Papers. Okay, and we're going to read excerpts of a few of them, and I'm going to hold off on that over the weekend. We'll do it Monday night. Okay, and come back Wednesday and discuss these. But there is a Federalist paper written by James Madison. It's Federalist number 78, okay, of 85, where he discusses this predicament. Okay, remember the Federalist Papers were written in support of the new Constitution. You guys know this, right? Like you were taught this, yes. So Madison has to try to explain this to the American people. Okay, and he has a difficult time doing so. So again, like in 1776, guys, they're going to push this issue back for another generation of Americans to deal with. They're not going to deal with this issue right here. Okay? And so I think it's fair to criticize them. But I don't know. I kind of like to have this discussion with my students here a little bit. Do you understand this? Like, is this okay with you? Does this sit okay with you? I mean, obviously, we wouldn't do this today. Okay, but it's 1787. Okay? So can you forgive George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, Franklin for allowing this to take place? Or you just kind of, throw, yeah.
Well, that's because perhaps you want to be like the person. Want you to be like the person that way, just getting rid of slavery.
Yeah. So we have a new country. First Constitution doesn't work, right? It's failing. And so we're going to do a new one. But if we don't do this, it's not going to pass. It's not going to get ratified.
But then pushing the issue back to the Civil War, so might as well just deal with them then.
But we don't have hindsight to look back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you feel about this, but it was a different time. So do you judge people in 1787 based on how we view the world in 2025 or 1960? You know what I mean? You judge people based on how we view the world today. And I think that's a great question, right? So should we celebrate George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, even Jefferson? Should we have monuments to these men in the United States? Okay, so there are people that think we shouldn't, okay, because of that. Okay, so like if you go back and look, a lot of former slaves have the last name Washington. They took the name of George Washington. Washington had schools named after him all across this country. We have the monuments in D.C. Okay, so I don't know. I think really that's kind of a personal thing. But as a nation, we've chosen to celebrate these men that allowed this institution to continue. Okay, Ben Franklin started the first abolitionist society. So he was fighting for it. John Adams was an ardent anti-slavery person. He fought against it. In Massachusetts, got rid of slavery. So I think there's a big economic component to this, right? is that these southern states needed the labor, free labor. Okay. And so, yes, this will be pushed back another 80 years till it's finally dealt with. Okay. Okay. Other compromises. So we got a bundle of compromises. Starting from scratch. We got a brand new constitution. What are we going to call the leader of the executive branch? Right? So, let me just, I forgot about this line in here. Okay. They did agree on this. And this is a step forward. It's not it's something. Congress agreed to not to ban the importation of slavery until 1808. But they did ban the importation of new slaves after 1808. So that sets up another issue. If you're not bringing in new slaves after 1808, the ones that are here, which is around 4 million, become a more valuable, sorry to use this word, but a more valuable commodity. Okay? Now, keep that in mind. So, talk about importing slaves. So if we stop importing new slaves in 1808, okay, the Civil War starts in 1861, ends in 1865. So you've got 53 years, okay, between when we stop importing new slaves and when we free the slaves. 53 years, okay? This is kind of important to today when they're talking about the 14th Amendment. When President Trump signs executive order saying that birthright citizenship, so like you're pregnant, you're standing in Mexico, you come across the border, and you have a baby in the United States, that baby is a citizen of the United States. Okay, that's birthright citizenship, right? When they wrote the 14th Amendment, the major focus was on the freed slaves. So the 14th Amendment says all those that are born here or naturalized into this country are citizens of this country. Okay, so if we stopped importing new slaves in 1808, most of the slaves that were here in 1865 were born in America. They were offspring of slaves that were brought here. A life expectancy during this time period is 42 for the average person. So for slaves, I mean, obviously you'll have some that live long lives. For slaves, you could expect life expectancy to be even lower. Okay, so we have 53 years here. Okay, and typically we did not bring in children as slaves. Okay, but more teen years and above. Okay, so if you were brought in 1807 as a slave, as a teenager, okay, you might be dead by now. Chances are you're already dead. Okay, so when we look at the 14th Amendment, which, guys, the Supreme Court's going to end up deciding this. Okay, what is meant by birthright citizenship? Understand the focus of the 14th Amendment was on the freed slaves, making them citizens. Does that make sense? Okay, and that was in 1866 with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Okay. Then they added this in. Congress could not place tariffs on exported goods. That's in the Constitution. It's a good thing they put it there, because otherwise Congress would tax it. Because if it exists, Congress likes to tax it. Okay. That's in there. Can't tax exporters. All right. All right. So let's deal with the executive branch. First, what are we going to call the chief executive? And second, how are we going to elect him? Okay. So the presidency. And yes, we're going to settle on that. The president. Not the prime minister. No, Alexander, we're not going to call him king. Okay. Now, some in the convention wanted the people to choose the president. Some wanted a parliamentary system where the Congress would elect the president. So again, another compromise here. Compromise is on state electors. Okay? So the number of electors would match the total number of members of Congress for each state. Okay? So our first, we have 13 states. The first House of Representatives is going to have 65 members. First Senate is going to have how many members? 26. Okay? Now that's going to be 2 from each state. And every state is guaranteed at least 1 member of the House of Representatives. So the least populated state, according to the census in 1790, is Delaware. Okay? Delaware gets at least 1. Okay? The most populated state, Virginia, is going to have more than that. Probably like 8. So you have state electors. And then the people get to vote for those electors. Guys, this is in the Constitution. And this is what we still use. Okay, we've never changed this. Now, there are people that want to change this. But before we talk about changing it, I'm going to go back to this map. Okay. Map in there. All right. So, sorry about the little eaves hanging down here. There we go. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So, guys, C-SPAN, which is a TV network that the government runs. So, if you have cable still, okay, or you can go online and look up C-SPAN. They basically cover the Congress, the executive branch, nonpartisan. It's not like PBS or NPR. It's just programming of what's going on with the government. Okay. So some states, okay, like North Dakota, very small population. Wyoming actually has the smallest population of the 50 states. Okay. They're guaranteed 1 member of the House plus 2 senators. Free electoral college vote. Okay. Every 10 years we do the census. Now, how many seats are there today in the United States House of Representatives? Let's do it again. All right, everybody together. How many members are there in the United States House of Representatives? 435. Okay, so every 10 years we do the census. Guys, people move. Okay, was anybody in here not born in Kansas? Okay, people don't move here. Now, if I ask that same question in Florida or Arizona or Texas, hands would be going up. I wasn't born here. I moved here. Okay? People don't move to Kansas, except for me. Okay? I've lived in 6 different states. Okay, so wherever I am at the end of the decade, the population count, well, that's the state I'm in. Okay, and I count. So every 10 years we do this. In some states, over time, gain population. Some states lose population. California became the most populated state in America in 1964. Now, for the first time in California's history, it lost an electoral college vote. It lost a House seat because it lost population for the first time in its history. Why are people leaving such a beautiful state? Maybe the state government is insane, or the taxes are too damn high. Okay, so you can see, now this is, see, you may not be able to see this +4 back there. Okay, this is +4. So between the year 2000 and 2010, Texas picked up 4 seats. And then 2020, Texas picked up 2 more. Okay, now each House seat today is about 800,000 people. So if you multiply 800,000 people times 4, because remember, you got 2 senators in here. Okay, we have 4 members of the House in Kansas, 2 senators, we have 6 electoral votes. So if you multiply 800,000 times 4, you get 3.2 million people, right? That's roughly how many people live in the state of Kansas. About 3 million people. Now, I was worried in 2020 that we might lose a seat. Because like I said, people leave Kansas, they don't move to Kansas. So I was worried about that. Who lost seats over the last 2 decades? Guys, Michigan has lost 2. New York has lost 3. So multiply 3 times 800,000 people. That's how many people have left New York. Okay? Pennsylvania has lost 2, because there's -1 here and 1. West Virginia's lost 1. Okay? Ohio lost 1. Illinois has lost 2. Okay? They've picked up. Of course, Florida's picked up. Colorado has gained population. Montana's gained population. Oregon has gained population. Okay? So people that are leaving California are moving where? Well, they're moving to Montana. They're moving to Idaho. They're moving to Arizona. They're moving to Texas. They're moving to Florida. Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. And when we get to 2030, guys, Tennessee's going to gain population. They're growing fast. Okay? Those 3 states have no state income tax. Okay? Plus, the weather's warmer. Okay? So old people, it's always been that way. We call them, when I lived in Florida, we call them snowbirds. So the people from the north come down here in the south, and they like it, and then they end up moving down there. Okay? Snowbirds, transplants. Okay? So, yeah, does everybody understand this? So you get 2 for the House, and then the total number of members, or you get 2 for the Senate, and then the total number of members of the House based on population. That's how we do the electoral college. Now, when we go vote in Kansas, you're actually voting for 6 Republican electors, 6 Democrat electors, 6 Libertarian electors, whatever party's on the ballot. You're voting for 6 electors. Who are these electors? They're people. They actually have names. Okay? Now, you may not know. You can look up their names. Okay? But, you know, you would choose somebody that's like a former governor of Kansas. Could be, you know, a Republican or a Democrat elected. Somebody that's died in the wool, Republican or Democrat. It's an honor to be chosen as an elector for your state. Those 6 people, and usually in Kansas, it's the Republicans, right? So those 6 Republican electors will cast the actual ballot for president and vice president, okay, after the November election. In early December, they will cast that vote, okay? So that's how the Electoral College works, okay? Now, we're going to talk about political parties in Section 3, and we will dig into this more about what's wrong with this, what's right with this, okay? And how people have opinions about the Electoral College versus the popular vote, which is obviously more democratic. Yes? All right? So, again, this just kind of shows that these people in the Constitutional Convention do not trust true democracy. Okay, so they set up a different system. All right? So, on September 17th, 1787, the majority of the delegates sign off on this new Constitution. They approve it, and then they got to send it to the states, where you need 9 of the 13 states to ratify this Constitution. Okay? And this is going to be a problem. It's going to take some convincing. Because what you are creating, guys, is the government basically that we have today. Some people would say that our government has become too powerful, that this new Constitution allows for tyranny. Others would disagree with that. This is what Patrick Henry said, who was opposed to this new Constitution, by the way, right? And thank God he was, because he's going to help us get something added to it, very important. What are they going to add to it? First 10 amendments, okay? The Bill of Rights, okay? In large part due to this man and other anti-federalists. They're like, You're not going to create this powerful a government without putting our rights in it. Okay? That's a big deal. So this is what Patrick Henry, and I want you to think about your government. Okay? Because this Constitution is what controls your government, limits its power. Remember, go back to the Magna Carta. Limit the power of government. So this is what Patrick Henry says. The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to control the people. No. It is an instrument for the people to restrain government. Okay? They put limits on what government can do, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. Okay? How you view government, how you view our Constitution. Okay? It limits the power of government, creating a structure that we will use to administer the rule of law. Okay? What's next? Okay. Let me pull up this real quick and just make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Where you at, Mouse? So, let me just kind of scroll through here a little bit. Virginia plan, New Jersey plan, Connecticut plan, 3/5, other compromises. Yeah, there's a couple things in here, guys. This thing right here, Electoral College, we did. The Senate is given the advise and consent power. So if you guys have been paying a little bit of attention to what's been going on in Washington, the president nominates cabinet members, other officials. Some of these officials must be approved by the Senate. Okay? It's called advise and consent. Also with treaties and federal judges and Supreme Court justices, the Senate must approve. Okay? Article 5, which we'll be talking about soon. How do we amend the Constitution? Talked a little bit about that yesterday. Okay? First capital under this new Constitution will be New York, with plans to build a new capital, more centralized, not so far away from Georgia, okay, out of the swamps of Maryland. We're going to call it the District of Columbia. So the first capital was where? Before New York. Philadelphia. First capital was Philadelphia, the second was New York, and the third is DC. All right, so we're divided on this. And it's not just north and south. Okay, it's not just north and south. Okay, New York doesn't like this new Constitution. Virginia doesn't like this new constitution, even though Madison's and Washington or Virginians are at the center of it. They got this guy back there yelling about it, Patrick Henry from Virginia. Okay. So when we look at these two groups, these two factions, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Okay. So like I said, Monday, I have, I think, 5 of these in your book that we're going to read. So this is the last reading assignment where we have a discussion over these things. So you'll have another assignment coming, 10 points. You get 10. Now, if we have a really good discussion, maybe you get more than 10 points. If discussion stinks, we don't get 10 points. You get 5 out of 5. Okay, whatever that may be. Okay, but since we're missing a lot of people today, I'm going to hold off till Monday on that. Okay, but the main arguments here, okay, are listed here. Now, in your book, I think it's on page 46. 43, excuse me. Kind of lay out some of the major arguments. Let's see real quick. Is this something you're writing about? No. More like a 2-pointer. Okay, not a 5-pointer. Okay, no long answer on it. Okay. All right. Obviously, guys, they're concerned that this new power, the Anti-Federalists are concerned that this new government has too much power. Okay. But the small states, you know, the ones that supported the New Jersey plan, what do they have in place that will protect them from the bigger states? And where? Where? They have the Senate. Okay, the Senate protects the small states. Again, guys, they did that to protect the states. And so when we allow direct election of senators by the people, and the people do not closely watch our senators, then the states lose protection. Again, if you agree with me, join the cult. I think they didn't vote yesterday. I didn't get a text or anything on that. Maybe I'll get it today. Because I get text updates from the cult. Okay. Now this is a minor argument, but some said, well, it doesn't mention God enough in the Constitution. Okay. This is the big one. This Bill of Rights idea. Okay. Now, who wrote the Federalist Papers? You guys remember? Madison, Hamilton, and John Jay. Okay. Now John Jay is going to go on to become the first what? Supreme Court Chief Justice. Okay. Now he's going to end up quitting because he has no power. Originally, we'll get to all that. Madison's going to go on to become what? The fourth. So we got some stuff in between. What's interesting is Madison is going to become the first. He's going to serve in the House. And what do we call the leader of the House of Representatives? That's Senate. The Speaker of the House. The first Speaker of the House, the United States House of Representatives, is James Madison. Okay. Hamilton, of course, will go on to become our first what? Treasury Secretary. Yeah. Okay? So those are your Federalists that write the Federalist Papers. So they got to make arguments convincing people, New Yorkers, Virginians, that they want to do this. Okay? Madison said, we don't need a Bill of Rights. What the heck, James? What do you mean we don't need a Bill of Rights? He says, well, listen. Remember when I showed you that slide a couple days ago? The states have bills of rights. You don't need a Bill of Rights for the federal government because the federal government doesn't have the power to take away your rights under this new Constitution. What do you mean? What are our rights? They're not listed anymore. Okay, so let me come back to the 14th Amendment again. Anybody's born here or naturalized into this country is a citizen of this country. And all citizens have equal protection under the law. Under the Constitution, we all have equal protection. What the 14th Amendment does is it applies the Bill of Rights to the states. So when you have Jim Crow laws across this country, especially in the South, 14th Amendment says you have equal protection under the law for all citizens. That the Bill of Rights is applied to the states. This means that you are a U.S. citizen first and a resident of the state of Kansas second. And that Kansas cannot violate your rights. Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina cannot violate your rights. Now, how long did it freaking take from the 14th Amendment in 1866 to actually enforce that? Another 60 years, or another 100 years, or another 120 years, depending on who you ask. Okay? So guys, when I talk about the 14th Amendment, like this thing is crucial to us as individuals, every individual in this country. It's crucial to us because it applies the Bill of Rights to the states. Okay? And then slowly we chip away discrimination, segregation, and so forth. Okay? Look excited to receive that. Okay. So, North Carolina, Massachusetts said, we are not ratifying this Constitution unless there's a Bill of Rights. They said, we are not going to ratify. So they made it a condition. And the Federalists, Madison, said, okay, we will do a Bill of Rights in the first Congress. So the guy that didn't think we needed it, Madison, is going to be the author of many of the same Bill of Rights he opposed, because he's going to be the leader of the House of Representatives. Good? Okay. So you need 9 states to ratify. They published the Federalist Papers, 85 essays, yes? And people read them. You're going to read them on Monday or Tuesday, okay? They're written in English. The average American, 1789, can read these. Okay? So let me go back to the other notes. See if we got anything missing there. Okay? So you need 9 Federalists support a new Constitution, anti-Federalists opposed. Everybody's got that. Yeah. It's an honors class. All right? So here's Patrick Henry. There's a picture. Okay? Said the national government become too powerful. All right? Let's talk about that. Patrick Henry, right? Depends on who you ask. Has our federal government become too powerful? Can this popular government only exist in a small territory? We have manifest destiny now. We got 50 states. Can this only be held together through force? Well, what happens if you don't pay your taxes? You guys know what wage garnishment is? So you owe the IRS money. And you didn't pay. So they take money out of your paycheck until you pay it back. Okay? Could you go to jail for tax fraud? Yes, you can. Okay? So I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this, whether we're only held together by force, this can only work in small territories, but this was a fear. Okay? Of course, as I said, the big one, okay, well, here's another one. Strong executive would become too much like a monarch. Now, you guys know history. So, have any of our presidents become like a king? What's the closest thing we've had? The closest president that we've had to a king. Who? Elected 4 times. Completely transformed this country. Okay? Now, if you have somebody on the left today, Trump, king, okay? I think they're trolling people, but they put a picture with Trump with a crown on his hat. Okay? I think maybe Time Magazine had it or something. It's hard to tell what's true and what's not true on the internet right now. But anyhow, this would be a danger to individual rights and representative government itself. Now, let me explain a little bit to you guys. How much time do we have? Let's just talk about this stuff. Talk about this for a second. Okay, we've got 3 branches. Okay? Go in order. Okay. Which one of these 3 branches did the founders, want to be the most powerful? Yeah, they wanted the legislature. Okay. Now, we're 230 some years into this thing. Okay. Now, under FDR, our national government started doing a lot more than it ever has, and has continued to do so since. So the national government's involved in healthcare, okay? It's involved in energy, it's involved in all kinds of things. Okay? Transportation, roads, national government's involved. Okay? So when you get that, it does so much more. They pass the laws. He enforces the laws. They judge whether the laws and actions of the other 2 jive with the Constitution. Okay? So today, 2025, which of these 3 branches is the most powerful? Now, they were meant to be co-equal branches of government. Reality is they're not. So what do you think? We're going to vote. So think about it for a second. We're going to vote which branch you think is the most powerful today. Now, 1789, the judicial branch was the weakest by far until 1803 with a big Supreme Court case in 1803 that changed the Supreme Court. Anyone? Higgin? 1803 Supreme Court decision? created something called judicial review. Yeah, there you go. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. Okay. Before that, that's why John Jay quit. And he's like, why am I even here? They stuck the Supreme Court in the unfinished basement of the Capitol. They're like the redheaded stepchild. Okay. Like, what are we doing down here? We're doing nothing. I'm quit. John Jay's going to go become the governor of New York. Okay. So, all right, you ready to vote? All right, we'll just go in order. Raise your hand if you think which branch is the most powerful today, Reed. Go, Reed. Reed! All right, we'll let him sleep. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just looking for your opinion. Get off the fence. All right, which branch is most powerful? How many guys say legislative today, 2025? Executive. Getting some peer pressure here? Judicial. Megan. Okay. Now, of course, there's no right answer. Okay, this is opinion. But let me just throw this at you. These people are not elected. They are selected. They are appointed for terms for life. And they get to determine whether the actions of the other two are valid or invalid. Of course, I'm talking about the Supreme Court. 9 people. Now, the Supreme Court, guys, changes culture. So all these things that Trump is doing right now as the chief executive, a bunch of them are getting challenged in the court, right? They fully expected that to happen. Okay? So yesterday, John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, got involved. That's the first time so far. And he said that there was a lower court judge that put a stop or a pause on Trump trying to stop certain spending from moving forward. And if the judge said, you can't do that, Mr. President, Congress appropriated that money. You got to spend it. Okay. John Roberts overturned that yesterday and said, well, we're going to hear this case, but while we're hearing this case, we're going to let the president suspend it. Okay. So, guys, this is the arbiter of justice right here. Okay. They're the ones that are going to decide. Now, the executive branch has become much more powerful. And it's kind of on purpose. These people that none of you voted for, these people don't like to take the blame. So if they can point the blame on somebody else, it's easier for them to get what? Reelected. So in many cases, the legislative branch will abdicate their responsibilities and allow the president to do it. Okay? We've had how many impeachments? 3, one guy twice. Okay? So, if the legislative branch really took its job seriously, you would have more impeachments. If they really wanted to take that power back, you would see more impeachments. No. Mr. President, you can't do that. That's our job. Okay? So when Joe Biden, just to give you an example, this is simple stuff, said we're going to forgive student loan debt for all these billions of Americans. And the Supreme Court says, Mr. President, you don't have the power to do that. They told Biden that. He says, well, I'm going to find another way to do it. And I'm going to get around the Supreme Court and do it. Okay? What could have the legislative branch done? They could have impeached him for violating a Supreme Court order. Okay? Like the Democrats can do now. But guys, to convict the president in the Senate, you got to have 2/3 of the Senate vote to convict, which has never happened. Okay, that's political. That's politics. It's all politics. Okay, so yeah, because the government does so much more than it ever has, the executive branch has gotten more powerful with it because they're the ones that carry out the decisions, okay, of the Congress. So yeah, their power is going to go up, and the legislative branch doesn't like to take the blame, so they give it to the president because everybody knows who the president is. Raise your hand if you can name the 3 people in Washington, D.C. that represent you in the House and the 2 senators. Maybe. So Ron Estes is our representative of the 4th District of Kansas, and our 2 senators, M&M, Jerry Moran and Roger Marshall. Okay? They want you to know their name the year they're up for election. Other than that, yeah.
Would it be more likely to take back power if they had term limits there because they're not as worried about getting rid?
I think so. And I think they'd be more willing to make difficult decisions. They don't like to cause pain. And this is where Elon's getting into trouble. He's having too much fun, but he's causing pain. You know what I mean? And so people don't like those optics. You know, even some conservatives are like, hey now. People are losing their jobs. Yeah, I like what you're doing, but understand, people are losing their jobs. This is hard on people. Okay? So, you know what I mean. Mary, you're with me, right? Right-wing wacko. Okay? So, all right, that's a good stopping point. Hope you guys have a great weekend.